Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our final library lunch and learn for 2021. I cannot believe that this is happening. We can't believe the year went so fast. We did decide when we started, we hope you can all hear us okay and that you are all logged in and ready to go. This is going to be a really fun program today. And we did decide when we started the lineup for the year back last January, or maybe it was even this time last year. We knew that we wanted to end the year on a cooking theme because why not? It's the holidays. It's when people are talking about food and recipes and family. And so we have a little bit of everything for you today. And we're just so happy that you're here. A little bit of housekeeping, just so you know, you can always change your view to see um, just the speaker view. You could always do that. That's just my little housekeeping tip for you. And also, just so as we always remind you, you don't have to write anything down because we're going to be sending this whole presentation to all of the attendees after. We have a survey for you to fill out after. We hope you enjoyed the Library Lunch and Learn series of 2021. And we are looking to see what other programming we can add for you next year. And again, it's just been really fun. We've talked to so many interesting librarians. We've found out so many great things going on in the libraries across the country. And again, today is going to be no different. It's been a challenging year for everybody, but look, we've made it through. So this program has been helpful for us in so many ways, and we hope it's been helpful to you in other ways as well. And before we get to our first guest, I want to introduce my colleague Miriam and have her introduce herself and thank Miriam for this being her brainchild. And we did it, even though we wanted to, we were mad at her for having this idea because we knew it would be a lot of extra work. It was so successful and so fun and honestly super interesting with the people that we've gotten to talk to this year. I mean, I remember when Tom Vanderbilt was talking about never being too old to learn something and all sorts of things. So it's been an inspiring year. We've gotten to see great artwork from different library archives, and it's just been really fun. So thank you all so much for joining us this year. Miriam, I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Kelly. Welcome, everyone. It's such a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for joining this Library Lunch and Learn program. We are so grateful for your attendance here. Um, I wanted to share some news before we start our program and let you know that Penguin Random House and the Association for Rural and Small Libraries have partnered to launch a grant program to recognize rural, small, and tribal libraries that support underserved communities. As you all know, rural libraries are community lifelines providing access to important services and resources. And this program will award grants up to $2,500 to libraries that demonstrate a true need. And these grants may be used from everything from literacy services and library programming to books and resources like hotspots. So for more information about this program, please visit the URL at the bottom of this slide. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our first special guest. Caity Ritzen is the Acting Director and Library Supervisor for the Free Library of Philadelphia's Culinary Literacy Center. Using cooking as the vehicle for learning, the Culinary Literacy Center advances literacy through food and cooking around a communal table. Opened in 2014, the Culinary Literacy Center is the first space of its kind in a public library and serves as a model for libraries worldwide. Caity received her MS-LIS from Drexel University in 2012, her Small Business Planning Certificate from Temple's Fox School of Business in 2016, and her Project Management Professional Certification in 2018. Caity is currently serving on the Advisory Council for the Philadelphia chapter of the Careers Through Culinary Arts program and is a member of the Teaching Kitchen Collaborative. Welcome, Caity.
Thank you so much, Miriam. Good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited to be here and grateful for this opportunity to talk a little bit about the work that we do in the Culinary Literacy Center. So My name is Caity. As Miriam said, I am the Culinary Literacy Supervisor for the Free Library of Philadelphia. I've been a librarian at the Free Library for 7 years, and I've been with the culinary program for about 2.5. My background is as a librarian. I don't have any formal culinary training, but I love to cook. I really love to eat, and I really like finding new ways to engage with our community here in the Philadelphia region. So our mission is to advance literacy through food and cooking around a communal table. And essentially what that means is that we think that there are so many different ways to learn and so many different things that you can learn through food. I mean, you can practice reading recipes. There's so much math in cooking. You can learn the science of fermentation. You can learn chemistry, and it's a great way to learn about other cultures and cuisines. And along that same line, it's just, I think, the greatest connector that there is, the opportunity to share food and tradition with others around a table together. So that's really what we focus on, is education and community. We opened up in 2014, which is wild that we've been open for 7 years. Since then, we've held over 1,800 programs, and we've shared our table with over 66,000 people, both in person and virtually. And I'll be talking a little bit today about the virtual portion and how we pivoted to taking a culinary class from in person to through the computer in people's homes. So this is a screen of what working from the office is like. That's where I am today. We have this gorgeous teaching kitchen that really operates as the hub for culinary literacy programming for our library system, right? So we have a lot of classes here in this great space, but really it's like our base camp for the culinary work that we do across the city. So in our commercial kitchen, we have 16 burners, we have 4 convection ovens, we have 2 salamanders, a walk-in fridge, Rietzen fridges, and we have this fantastic AV system where there are 3 cameras throughout the space that offer differing views that hooks up to our big screen TV over there so that participants can see, exactly what's happening on the presentation table at the front there. And that's really helpful to give everyone a view of what the instructor is, doing. It's great for things like knife skills, watching a professional dice an onion in a knife skills class. You don't want to be in the back of the room there. And after a 1.5 years of trial and error, we were finally, thankfully, able to connect it to Zoom. So we can, stream virtually through our kitchen utilizing our AV system. So that's working from the office. And I wanted to share the glamour of working from home. So this is my kitchen in South Philadelphia after an apple cider donut making class we held a couple of weeks ago. And I think this is proof in my mind that you can provide culinary education regardless of the space that you're in, because my kitchen is extremely small. You'll see on the left, there is a chair with a cooling rack on it because it didn't have counter space. My fancy setup on the right, which is a laptop on top of some cans of seltzer. And in the back, I couldn't find a rolling pin because I don't have a full kitchen, where we have all this equipment to pull from. So I had to clean off a wine bottle and use that as my rolling pin to roll out the dough. So, really grateful for the opportunity to do it in person as well as from home, but from home cleaning up is not the greatest. As I mentioned, we offer programming across Philadelphia, and we do that with the help of a couple of tools. So in addition to our big commercial kitchen, we have 3 culinary literacy carts, sort of all in one semi-mobile carts that we have at some of our larger regional libraries. And they're Charlie carts with modifications. They're really expensive. They're like $12,000 for a cart. if you have a stationary program, they can be great, but we have 54 libraries and we wanted to be able to extend our reach even further. So we came up with these great kitchen in a box kits, which are customizable, portable totes, you know, where we can ship off a tote full of, you know, kitchen equipment to any location in Philadelphia alongside, you know, our books. And, you know, the tote can include things like a blender, cutting boards, chef's knives, an induction burner, really whatever it is based on the program that the branch wants to provide. And a fully like tricked out kit is about $200 a box. Thanks. If you want to learn more about that, we developed an online toolkit for public libraries, which you can find on our website, freelibrary.org/cook. If you are interested in starting a culinary program or growing a culinary program, I super recommend you check it out, and also email me. We love talking to other people who are interested in culinary literacy. In terms of programs, we have 3 flagship programs. We have Edible Alphabet, Nourishing Literacy, and Healthy Communities, and they have a really defined target audience. So we really aim, you know, all of our marketing and engagement towards these audiences with a high need in that community. Edible Alphabet, we are extremely proud of. It is our program for English language learners with a mission to teach English language and literacy skills through hands-on cooking projects and build community among participants. So it's sort of a mix of traditional ELL learning from a textbook and then cooking a recipe together. And what we found is that participants, they relax more. They want to share, they want to practice English. You know, when you're sharing something, you know, from your culture, or, you know, you're excited to try something new, it really helped improve their literacy. And it also helps because we're committed to building a welcoming and inclusive community here in Philadelphia. So it really inspires people to take ownership of the library space, because a lot of people, if they're not from, you know, the US, they may not know all that the public library has to offer to them for free. So it's a great way for us to show, you know, all of our other great things like job seeking assistance, small business building, you know, all that good stuff. And in the upper right, that's our picture of us in person, and below is one of our virtual classes with our chef instructor, Genevieve. We've held weekly virtual classes with Edible Alphabet for about 1.5 years. And it's been it reduces barriers to access, right? Because anyone from the city can tune in, and we've been able to provide free ingredients to participants, thanks to one of our corporate sponsors, Rietzen. And as a result, there's like, anyone can pick up a bag of groceries at their local library and participate in one of our classes. Nourishing Literacy is our program for youth, school-age children, and caregivers. Pre-pandemic, and hopefully soon, it was primarily our school visit program where we would welcome, you know, pre-K through high school to our kitchen for a lesson that was developmentally appropriate in terms of cooking skills, and it paired with Common Core lessons too, right? So we had a great science class, we still have it, we have a great science class that the students can create quick pickles or quickles and learn all about the art of fermentation. And that's in the upper right-hand corner. More recently, we have pivoted to more of a holistic wellness for youth. So it combines a food-based curriculum with all kinds of different, you know, wellness activities. So it can be food and yoga and art, or food and writing, or food and emotional literacy. One of our classes is We Root for Sweet Potatoes, and it provides, you know, really simple, flexible recipes using sweet potatoes, and a yoga lesson that's all about roots and growing roots and being strong like a sweet potato. You know, really whatever we can do to get kids and families excited about fruits and veggies, we are in. And this is our traveling fruit bowl bar where kids can try new fruits and sort of customize the experience for themselves. And then we have Healthy Communities, which is our primary program for neighborhood libraries. It's based on providing, culinary classes that are really culturally appropriate based on the neighborhood and the requests of the communities that we served, and engaging people in a way that's really capacity building. We utilize a lot of the Old Ways curriculum, which is plant-forward food and nutrition lessons based on the African and Latinx diasporas, excuse me. And below we have Claire teaching a taste of African heritage from her own kitchen in North Philadelphia, which was pretty fun. So in addition to all of our flagship classes, we also offer a really wide variety of public programs. They are a great entry point to all that the library has to offer, showcase our diversity, and just get people really excited about learning. We've had some great local chefs, we've had food historians, we've had cookbook authors. So if you are a cookbook author and you want to do a presentation, definitely let me know. It's great now that we're virtual too, so you don't have to travel all the way to Philadelphia. We're doing a program in January with a couple of cookbook authors who will be streaming in from London. So that'll be exciting. And these pictures really show how we pivoted some of our public programs. We held a lot of outdoor programs on our rooftop. We held a lot of programs through Zoom. We've recently started hybrid programs as well, because in person in Philadelphia, we are really limiting capacity. So, we have a few people here, and then many other people can stream in from Philly or really across the world. One of the most common questions I get is, how are we funded? And we are a very big program, right? We've been around for 7 years. We have this kitchen space, the 3, culinary literacy carts. It's pretty big. So we're funded by a mix of all different, revenue streams. We have space rental. A small portion of wedding and conference rentals comes to us. We have a foundation that helps us acquire some private dollars and funding. I'm a civil servant, I'm a public librarian, so my salary is paid through the city. And a really small number of our classes are ticketed at a modest ticket price, just, help us provide all the great free programs that we do here. So as I mentioned, our program is pretty big, but culinary literacy is something that is eminently scalable, in my opinion. It's really open-ended, and I've worked with so many people who define culinary literacy in a different way. It's really unique to you and your community, and there are just endless ways to implement it. So, if you're interested in learning more and helping to define your scope and vision, absolutely reach out to me or anyone on our team. You can find me at Free Library Cook on Instagram and Facebook. Shoot me an email. Email us at kitchen@freelibrary.org, and we will just be so stoked to engage and work with you. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Caity. That was so inspiring. I just wanted, there's some incredible programs that you're offering the public this season, including one that's focused on the Thanksgiving table with Chef Char Nolan, Drexgiving with Lady Lola LaRue, and a virtual screening of Make Food Not Waste. And you mentioned, are these programs then available for attendees beyond the Philadelphia border?
Oh my gosh, yes. That is always honestly my first question I ask people for virtual classes is, hey, where are you tuning in from? And, primarily it's Philadelphia, but then people will chime in like, oh, California, Austin, Colorado. We've had people from Ireland, like all across the world. So if you see a virtual class, absolutely sign up. We have a holiday class next Tuesday that's virtual. Heading into the holidays with healthy nutrition with a registered dietitian. And any of our classes, just visit us at freelibrary.org/cook and sign up. We'd love to have you.
I think that you may have answered both of the questions that came into the chat. One was about your sponsors. I believe you answered that. but she did, Samantha did ask, I'd love to bring culinary literacy programs here, but we don't have the budget for the food costs and the programmer. A grocery sponsor would help so much, especially for those with food insecurity. So do you have anything you'd like to add about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's always helpful to reach out to anyone in your community. Grocery stores tend to have, you know, a small amount of money to give out to local organizations. You could go for a big sponsor, or there are plenty of family foundations that are out there in the community who are looking to sponsor things, especially for combating food insecurity and providing health and nutrition programming in the community. And what we always say is our biggest asset is our community engagement. Like as librarians, we know how to reach the community. People in the community trust us. They'll be very vocal in, you know, what they're looking for. And that's something that a lot of corporate sponsors definitely find appealing.
Thank you. And another question, I think you do have your um, contact information on the screen, but somebody asked, my daughter's field is in food security. Nourishing Literacy would be a great program for her to begin in Washington State. How could she get information from you? And I would assume just from your contact information on the screen, which, like I said, we will be sending all this information out at the end.
Yeah, definitely reach out. We have a ton of, you know, activity workbooks for the Nourishing Literacy that we can send out. And we have a full curriculum through Edible Alphabet too, if you do have a high population of English language learners in your community.
Great. And actually, there's a couple more little questions. Karen asked, how hard is it to select what programs you'll offer each season? I'm sure that's hard. How do you narrow it
The
down when
hardest
you want to do so
part.
many things? I'm sure it is.
I literally have an idea list like 1,000 ideas long. And then after a lot of our programs, you know, I just send a questionnaire out like, what do you guys want in the community, and see if I can match any of them up. But yeah, a lot of things I think about. I'm like, all right, next year, or the year after that, or you know, the one after that.
Yes, we run into the same problem actually, and I'm sure with food it's even more tempting to just want to do everything. And we did have one comment that said, my local library got a grocery store to sponsor free fruit to give out for libraries. So that's a great comment too. So thank you everybody. Caity, that was so helpful. I mean, I too root for sweet potatoes. I love that. And also I have to say, I was inspired by the fact that you are able to teach culinary literacy and cooking classes from a small kitchen, because you're right, not everybody has the kitchen that the Free Library of Philadelphia has. And I'm stealing your wine bottle rolling pin idea.
Yeah, that was
Because
not embarrassing at all.
while I can never find a rolling pin, I always have a wine bottle handy. So thank you so much, Caity. And thank you all
Pleasure.
for joining us for Caity's presentation, and we'll go on to our first author. But Caity, that was really helpful, and we miss visiting the Free Library of Philadelphia so much. We've done programming there before with some of our authors. I remember we were there once with Ruth Reichel. That was so special to us, and yeah, so we miss being there. This is bittersweet, but it's nice to see. It was nice to see in there. So
Thank you.
you take care, and I hope to see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And you're giving lots of ideas to people, which is great. Thank you so much. All right, it's just going to take me a second here to situate and bring our next guest up. So just give me 1 second while I'm doing that. You could think about all of the ideas you have for literacy and food in the upcoming year. I'm going to bring Molly Birnbaum onto the screen. Here we go. And sorry, 1 sec. Okay. So while Molly is coming up on the screen, I'm going to just read her fantastic biography here, her little bio. And we're so excited to talk about cooking for young scientists today. If you have children like mine, I have 3 sons, and 2 of them I'd say cook way better than I do. So this is going to be fun. But Molly Birnbaum is the editor-in-chief of America's Test Kitchen Kids. It's a multimedia brand that is building a new generation of empowered cooks engaged eaters, and curious experimenters. Since launching in 2018, ATK Kids has published and sold over 1.3 million cookbooks and spent a total of 143 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. There's also picture books and board books. The Young Chefs Club and the Preschool Chefs Club are subscription box programs delivering kid-tested and kid-approved recipes, experiments, and activities straight to kids' doorsteps. Molly is also host of Mystery Recipe, a successful podcast for kids and their grown-ups, exploring the fun, fascinating, and fantastical sides of different kitchen ingredients. So Molly, this is going to be really fun, and I'm sure we'll have lots of questions and great resources to offer to our librarians today. I am going to get rid of this screen so you can see Molly bigger. And don't forget to put on the layout where it's a speaker view only so you can see Molly experimenting with our edible spheres, I believe. All right. Hi, Molly. Oh, you are muted. Let's just unmute you.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, and I can see you. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good.
So I'm so excited to be here. Today I want to talk about teaching kids about food and cooking, in particular about science. I loved hearing everything Caity had to say about how you teach through food, and that's exactly what we do at America's Test Kitchen Kids. America's Test Kitchen has been around for 30 years teaching adults how to cook. But the first time we really started talking to kids was in 2018 when we launched this new brand, which its mission is to let kids understand more about the world through the lens of food. So it's a super, super fun thing that we do. But we just published a new book called The Complete Cookbook for Young Scientists. And this is a book for 8 to 12-year-olds. And the inspiration behind this book is we get questions from kids all the time. We have a lot of kids who test our recipes for us before we publish them. We won't publish a recipe unless 80% of the kids who try it at home, we have a group of 15,000 kids from across the country right now, will say they'll make it again. And they ask us questions all the time about food and food science, and that inspired this whole new book, which asks these questions, like, why do onions make you cry? How does pasta cook? What can you do with yogurt, etc.? And every single question has a science experiment that kids can do at home to help answer that question, and then recipes that stem from that question. But today, I'm going to do one of the recipes from my favorite question in this book, which is, how does gelatin work? Which doesn't sound like a super exciting question, but it actually is. And this is a very delightfully weird and easy recipe to do to show just that. So, edible spheres. In front of me, I have pomegranate juice. I don't know how much you guys can see, but I have some pomegranate juice, and I have some dried gelatin here. You can make edible spheres with any edible liquid that you have in your kitchen. This can be a juice like pomegranate juice, coconut milk, chocolate sauce, hot sauce, soy sauce. The world is your oyster. But so I'm going to sprinkle this dried gelatin over my room temperature pomegranate juice here, and then stir it up with a rubber spatula. And so gelatin is a protein. It's the same thing that's in Jell-O. It makes things wiggly, and it loves water. So it's soaking up this pomegranate juice and turning it into kind of a thick little liquid here. And gelatin is also super temperature makes a big difference when it comes to these proteins in gelatin. So when it is warm, it is liquid, and when it is cold, it is solid. So this is kind of a room temperature cold solid mixture. I have a 1/4 cup of hot pomegranate juice right here that I'm going to pour in. And this is guaranteeing that this whole mixture right here is liquid. So I'm just whisking this up.
And is it hot or is it boiling?
It's hot. I microwaved it for about 30 seconds. So it's just hot, like semi-steamy pomegranate juice. Poured it in here and it made it immediately a liquid mixture. So I'm going to pour this into a squeeze bottle, which through the magic of my tiny kitchen, I have already done. So I have a squeeze bottle here of warm gelatin mixture. It's sat for a little bit, so it's not hot, it's just warm. And then I have how we're gonna play with temperature. So this is a container of cold vegetable oil. It just sat in my fridge overnight. So it's cold vegetable oil, and I have it in a bowl here with ice cubes. So the key is this is cold and our gelatin mixture is warm. So what we're gonna do is pour the gelatin very slowly into the cold oil. And it's gonna go from warm gelatin to immediately cold gelatin. And because this is a water-based liquid going into oil, oil and water do not like to combine. So the oil is going to compress each little droplet that falls into this oil into a perfectly round sphere that will immediately solidify because gelatin goes from liquid to solid when it gets cold. So see if I can put this up so you can see it. And then we drop them in. And it's super easy. They're just tiny little droplets. If you do a couple in the same place, you can make a large droplet. If you do small ones, and they float down. See if I can pick this up and bring it closer to the camera, because it is very cool to watch them as they just kind of float down. It's like a lava lamp. And you can do this with any type of liquid that you add gelatin to. And once you've gone through all of the gelatin liquid and all the little droplets have fallen to the bottom, you then put it in a fine mesh strainer, keeping the oil to the side, and rinse them off a little bit so that these spheres don't have oil on them, but then they are 100% edible. And I can show you what they look like. So this is a little bowl of edible spheres. They are pomegranate juice, so they're tiny, perfectly round, little purple spheres that taste like pomegranate. One of the ways that I like to eat them is for breakfast on this yogurt parfait. You can just stick them on top, and it's beautiful and tasty at the same time. But other things we do with this, I've made hot sauce spheres that you can then put on avocado toast. It almost looks like caviar, which is kind of bizarre, but they're just slightly hot, perfectly round spheres that go on top of avocado toast. Chocolate sauce spheres are amazing on ice cream. They add a really interesting textural contrast. But we found that this is a wonderful way to
teach dried fruit. It's almost like you're adding a dried fruit, sort of, but in a kind of probably a tastier way.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of like a dried fruit. They aren't dry because, you know, that gelatin has soaked up all that liquid. So that liquid is all there. It's like a fancy Jello minus the added sugar, or it's eating these familiar ingredients in a different way because we played with just one little element of what to do there.
That's very fun. I'm sorry for interrupting you. That's very fun.
No worries. Yeah, we love to play around with food a little bit for kids to help illustrate the interesting things that they can do to food to understand how food works, but also getting them engaged in the process of making and creating and experimenting in the kitchen, and how, you know, making mistakes is a great thing that we encourage because it's a wonderful way to learn, and trying out new things in experiments is also a wonderful way to learn.
Miriam is asking you, so is it like like boba?
It is. It's different. It's different. It's than boba, but it is boba-like.
Fun.
Yeah, it's very fun.
And you put, I'm just curious, I'm just like fascinated by somebody that, you know, it's funny because I mean, most people my age and older probably grew up on Jello, and it always felt like a science experiment. So it's kind of fun to see behind it. You put that in, that was oil that you put it in, but does it have to be oil, did you say?
Yeah, you want to drop the little spheres into oil because oil and water don't like to mix, that oil immediately turns it into that perfect
Very fun.
sphere. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And it's like the opposite of telling kids that they can't play with their food. It's like the opposite.
Exactly. Yeah, there's so many ways to have fun with food with kids that isn't actually playing or wasting any food, but allowing them to, you know, empowering them to lead in the kitchen and get excited about what you're doing and learn about things like science along the way.
Um, well, I kind of want to ask one question before I get to the question in the chat. Um, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but I'm assuming you know the answer. And maybe it's just me, but why do onions make you cry? I've always wondered that.
Oh, yeah. So onions make you cry because, well, if you've ever noticed, an uncut onion, just a whole onion, will not make you cry. You could stick those next to your eye and you're good. It's when you start to chop the onions. And when you chop onions or damage them in any kind of way, you're basically rupturing cells within the onions themselves. And when the cells rupture as you slice the onion, compounds that were formerly kept apart through these, different cellular walls start to interact. And one of the things that happens when some of them interact is a new compound is created that really irritates your eyes. And so also when you're chopping those, everything is flying up into the air. It's minuscule, so you can't see it, but things are flying up into the air and they get in your eyes. And so this one new compound, as you slice an onion, makes you cry. And some people cry more than others. Like, I am a crier. If I cut an onion, if it's anywhere near me, I will start crying, but other people are not as much. And if it's a fresh onion, it will make you cry more than an old onion.
That's interesting. Thank you. I was just curious. And actually my son has asked me that a couple of times and I never have known the answer, so now I do. Another question we got in the chat is Allison's daughter loves to bake and has your other cookbooks. Are there a lot of baking experiments and recipes in this book?
Yeah, there is a good deal of baking. We know how much kids love to bake, and it's one of the best ways to get them excited about a science experiment. The other recipe in the gelatin chapter, actually, another one of my favorites, gelatin was like a sneak hit in this book, is a recipe for a mirror cake, which is a cake, a layer cake. We have chocolate with vanilla icing that you then put in the freezer briefly so it's very cold. And then you make a glaze for this cake that has two colors of food coloring, dark ones. We like to do black and blue. It's actually on the front of this book, and it has gelatin in it. And so the second you're pouring, again, this warm gelatin mixture over this cold cake, it solidifies. And the way that this mirror cake works is the second the glaze pours and it solidifies, it becomes shiny like a mirror. So it's almost like you can see yourself in the cake, and it also looks like a galactic universe picture, which we then decorate with like stars and glitter. And it is one of the most fun baking projects you could ever possibly do.
Oh, that's so fun. Thank you so much. I'm excited for people to learn more about these books. For anybody that's, what would be, my question is kind of twofold, but one of my last questions, you said you had 15,000 kids from around the world that will try the recipes. That's a lot of kids. Where do they, how do you pick which kids are going to participate in the program with you? And then also, what advice would you have for a librarian who's looking to start a cooking program for kids in their library?
Those are great questions. So our kid recipe testers are all volunteers from across the country. And the way it works is whenever we in our kitchen, so we have a team of recipe developers working every day to create recipes for kids. And as soon as they're finished with a recipe and it's ready to go out into the world, we send it to a panel of these kids, which is a few thousand kids will get each recipe, and ask them to cook it if they want to. There's no pressure to do so, but many of them are huge cooking enthusiasts. So cook the recipes and send us back their thoughts on the recipes. So we get comments on what worked, what didn't work, what they liked, what they didn't like. We get all of the comments you can possibly imagine, and then we use them to help further refine the recipe before we publish it. So it's really wonderful. We bring in some of the kids that are closer to our office for photos in the books. We use their quotes in the books too, so you can hear the kids who have been making these recipes the whole time. So they're a really wonderful community that we try and use as much as possible. And advice for libraries starting culinary programs, is that what you asked?
For kids, like what would you get? I mean, I'm sure it's not the easiest program to start. So do you have like a simple best practice that for kids cooking in general that you could just maybe share some of your wisdom?
Sure. I mean, the things that we've found the most with kids, and before the pandemic, we were bringing kids into our office a lot to cook with them, is that simple is great. The more complicated, the more difficult, obviously, it is. And that kids are capable of doing so much more than one often would think to start. They know so much more about food. They're excited to learn so much more about food than one would imagine for young kids. So allowing them to take the lead, even if they are making mistakes along the way, they're going to feel so proud of what they accomplished and learn so much along the way.
That's great. And thank you. And I think you're right. I think the bigger picture is that being teaching a child how to cook, and it gives them such a sense of accomplishment, and it makes them feel more independent, and there's so much good that can come from it,
Yeah.
as far as like in the community and in their families. And so this is really a fun book, and if you can squeeze a little science in there, that's even better. I think I might need this for the science part myself. So Molly, thank you. That was really fun. I've always been fascinated by gelatin, so I think I'm going to have to look into this more. But we encourage all of you to look at the America's Test Kitchen products for kids. For the young readers in your library and for programming, they are, as Molly stated, they are kid tested. So what better way is there to get going in your programs for kids, especially right now with a lot of kids being home more than usual. I think it's a really great time. So thank you for talking about the complete cookbook for young scientists, and thank you for showing us that cool recipe. That was fun.
Thank you for having me.
And it's always a pleasure. And I will say again to you that we have been fortunate enough to visit the America's Test Kitchen as well in Boston, and it is absolutely fabulous. And we loved being there, and we are always so happy to talk about any of your products. So thank you very much. Have a great day. Happy holidays, and thank you for being on this special program with us.
Thank you, Molly.
Okay, so we are just going to switch to our next panelist. Sorry, it always takes me a second. Miriam, did you learn any cooking tricks?
That was just so beautiful. It reminded me so much of boba tea. I think I want to try it with maybe coffee.
Oh, good idea. Good idea. I liked I liked the idea of the hot sauce for the avocado toast too. I thought that was very
Mm.
interesting. All right, we're switching our panelists here. Sorry, as much as I do these, there's just no way to do them faster. All right. Okay, and let me bring up slides for Fanny. And Miriam, maybe you could begin her bio while
Oh,
I'm bringing the
sure.
slides up.
We're so pleased and honored to have with us Fanny Singer, the author of Always Home, A Daughter's Recipe and Stories, a culinary coming-of-age memoir about growing up as the daughter of the culinary legend and pioneer of the farm-to-table movement, Alice Waters. A little bit of information about Fanny. She's a writer, a curator, a passionate home cook based in San Francisco. She holds a PhD from the University of Cambridge and illustrated and co-authored together with Alice Water, the acclaimed cookbook, My Pantry. In 2008 to 2009, she worked as the Bay Area restaurant critic for Gourmet. And since 2015, she's written on arts and culture for Wall Street Journal magazine, where she's also a contributing editor. Welcome, Fanny. We're
And
hoping that we can
I
see
just
you.
asked her to, yeah, Fanny, if you can hear us, just turn your camera back on. There you
Yay.
are.
Thank you so much for joining us, Fanny. This is Always Home is an extra special book. And just as Molly was referencing the fact that children understand the world through the lens of food. In many ways, this is one where you're revisiting your childhood and experiencing the world through the lens of food and family with a specific focus on your mother. Would you be able to share some special stories or remembrances that present her as the protagonist?
Well, the book is in a way, I think I realized it sort of after the fact that it was completely this kind of love letter to my mother. Like I had imagined that it was going to be more of a kind of comprehensive retelling of a childhood in food. And then I found that the thread, of course, that was connecting all of these stories, because the book rambles around. I mean, we go to France, we go to Mexico, we move between decades and travel with my family. And there are tons of very funny stories about our kind of, off-kilter approach to dining in different foreign locations, which were always governed by my mom's, eccentricities around ingredients and searching out things that were delicious and local, which has been an ethos, of course, that, Chez Panisse has been expounding for 50 years now. So the book is, it's like when people ask me what's the sort of most salient or funny story, it's like it all kind of, especially now that it's been, we're coming up on almost 2 years since I published the book, it all kind of melds together in this one, like a warm sort of feeling, a nostalgic feeling about my childhood. But, I lived with my mom for 10 months, right when I published the book.
Mm.
And I moved back in. It was like this book called Always Home came out right at the beginning of quarantine. I mean, it couldn't have had a more sort of like ridiculously prophetic title. And I moved in with my mom because at the time I was living in San Francisco, and she's in her late 70s, and no one had any idea what was going on with COVID and how long quarantine would be, how dangerous it was. So I thought best to spend time with her, and then ended up sort of launching this book in the context of my actual childhood home. And in a way, almost like living a lot of the stories, which are about how we cooked together, like the ways in which our palates are the same or different, or how we picked ingredients out of the back garden, was very much a living story for a good stretch of 2020. I don't know if that quite answers your question, but there was definitely some of the same things. Like we made coming home pasta, which is both a story in the book and also a recipe, at least like once a week, just to almost pretend we had been able to go away and had a ritual to come home to. And coming home pasta is this very simple recipe that is basically like something you can scrounge together with ingredients that you probably have in your pantry. So it's the kind of caper, parmesan, anchovy, chili flakes, and garlic, and like maybe an herb in the backyard. And coming home pasta became this sort of ritual that we had, even though we were always home during that period.
That's wonderful. In the first chapter, you write, "My mom speaks a language of beauty that I think very few are fluent in." And I was wondering if you wanted to share a little bit more about what that surrounding of being with your mom.
Well, it's been great to listen to the other two presenters and just hear about the approach to teaching, especially children, about cooking, because my mom's sort of secondary application has been this program called the Edible Schoolyard, which she's run for the last more than 25 years. And I was in middle school when she started this project at the local uh, middle school called Martin Luther King Junior High. And it was ripping up an asphalt parking lot and making a garden there. And my mom actually trained as a Montessori school teacher before getting into food, which almost happened kind of by accident after she went to France and ate delicious food there and felt like she needed to replicate it back in Berkeley, but taught for a few years and trained in Montessori in London in the 60s. And so her approach always was about letting children explore and be out in nature and have a very hands-on and sensory dense experience of the natural world. And she felt like it made it even more sensorially enlivening. I'm sure she would say something like that, if kids could actually harvest and then eat the food. So the Edible Schoolyard became a way of teaching children how to eat and how to live, even because they were cooking in the Edible Schoolyard has a kitchen classroom, and the students would grow something, nurture it, harvest it, and then learn how to cook it, and then also gather together and set the table and make bouquets of flowers and cooperate in a way together around the ritual of eating that then they would take home and teach to their families if it wasn't something that their families knew or did reflexively. And that was essentially the same education and upbringing that I had. Every night we ate together as a family. My mom stopped cooking on the line at Chez Panisse when I was born, so she wasn't at the restaurant, cooking in the evenings anymore. So we would always eat together or at the restaurant. And we had a garden that was really calibrated for children to be, out there exploring. So there would be like a little teepee of beans or peas that she would plant, and then they would all the little peas and beans would drip down into the teepee, and I would be able to sit in there and just snack on peas and beans. And I loved that because I was in this little protected space and it was made for me, and the peas are so sweet. And I loved the fresh little green beans and the discovery of finding those things on your own, looking for little fraises de bois or strawberries that she would plant all around the garden and in different places. So it wasn't just one patch, it was almost like a treasure hunt. And that is a pedagogy that is very Maria Montessori in its sort of ideology. And so it's also what governs the Edible Schoolyard. So I feel like my mom always calls me like a proof of concept. She's like, you prove that that this idea works, which is funny.
That sounds so magical. Just to transition, as far as I know, there's a chapter on school lunches, and you mentioned that around 10 or so, your school lunch situation went from being more or less normal, where you had peanut butter and banana sandwiches, like a celery with almond butter dotted with raisins, or I guess you called that ants on a log. That then that went on to become more bonkers. What were some of the lunchbox staples when you were in school?
My mom's lunches for me have been a sort of endless source of curiosity from people because they really were sort of extraordinary in their construction. But my mom would basically make lunches that always had like an icy thing to keep things cold. And then there were multiple containers with different things that I could construct things myself. Like she knew that I would be more interested if there was like carrot curls and then something to dip the carrot curls into. And so there was a little pot of dressing. There was always a salad separate from the dressing so that the salad wouldn't wilt in advance, which actually, like, she's right. I would have been like one of those kids who would have completely scoffed at like wilted, overdressed lettuce. So privileged childhood that I'd had. So I had like, this ridiculous, almost briefcase sized lunchbox that I had all through high school, which included me which meant that I, in fact, had to bring this thing on the BART train, which is the commuter train that I took to school every day, which was an hour in each direction. And I had this ridiculous, huge lunchbox, but I didn't get teased very much because most of my peers wanted to come around and like eat little bits of my sandwiches or my garlic bread or have bites of my fruit salad that she would make. And I mean, they were very beautiful. They often also included like real silverware and a napkin and a little, what she would call a nosegay. So like a tiny little bouquet of either herbs or flowers from the garden, something really simple, but that was really aromatic so that I could have a kind of aromatherapy experience too. I mean, they were definitely over the top, but I think actually not impossible to create. You know, nothing was, everything was pretty simple in terms of what the recipes were. But she was definitely invested in me eating something good at school.
Thank you. I was wondering if there were any cookbooks that you treat as scripture.
Yes, there are. There is, in fact, I say that my book is like largely devoted to my mom, but there are a couple chapters that are devoted to two of the cooks who were the most influential, I feel, in terms of my palate and the education of my palate. And one of them is by a woman who's sort of like a fairy godmother of sorts to me. His name is Nilofer Ichaporia King. And she wrote this beautiful book called My Bombay Kitchen. And she is a Parsi from Bombay. So she's of this Zoroastrian sect that landed in India many centuries ago and has actually remained very ethnically distinct. But their cooking is a kind of melding of some colonial British influences, Persian and Middle Eastern flavors, as well as Indian. And then Nilofer was just this wildly innovative cook. So in California, she was adapting to Mexican ingredients and local Californian ingredients. And I always delighted in eating at her table. It was like the best invitation you could ever get. And Nilofer actually chefs once a year for the Parsi New Year celebration at the equinox at Chez Panisse. So she's sort of helmed a sort of very specifically Nilofer type menu that has a lot of Indian flavors and it's just like, I mean, people book that meal, a reservation for that meal a year in advance because it's one of the best meals at Chez. And her book is just wonderful. The recipes are really like intuitive. They include this cardamom cake that is just one of the best recipes on the planet. And when I was making it a lot during quarantine, it kind of went kind of viral because a really dear friend, Semi Nosrat, also was talking about it so much that they ended up pushing her book into a second printing because people were like, how do we get this book? So now it's available again easily. And David Tanis is the other cook, and he has written a number of books now, but the two that I always return to are A Platter of Figs and The Heart of the Artichoke. And David was a longtime chef at Chez Panisse off and on, and he's just opened a new restaurant with my mom in Los Angeles called Lulu. So I'm living in LA these days, so I'm like finally close enough to someplace where I can routinely eat David's cooking. But he writes beautiful menus that are all unfussy recipes, easy to follow, and just so dense with flavor and nuance. And he's so good around ingredients, explaining ingredients and how to find them.
Thank you so much for sharing that. There are really so many memorable experiences that you share and so many funny ones as well, including the chaotic handbag scenario, which is hilarious. And I hope that our audience gets an opportunity to read this beautiful, beautiful memoir. And also you recorded it as well with your mom.
My mom wrote a foreword for it, and so she reads the foreword, and I did the audiobook. So it is available as an audiobook as well.
Thank you so much, Fanny. The book is Always Home, A Daughter's Recipes and Stories, and we hope you get a chance to experience it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Fanny. And we did get a request for to put the names of the authors and the cookbooks that you mentioned in the wrap-up report, and we totally will. So thank you. Those were great suggestions. And I love the way, Fanny, I think you ended the presentation perfectly, because I think food is such a fun part of life in so many ways for so many people. The joy of cooking. So for you to bring, so we had like the community aspect from the librarian, we had the science part from Molly, and getting kids to start love cooking at an early age, and then for you to end it with stories about your childhood that remind you of certain recipes. I think that's the one thing that everybody has in common. No matter what, you know, people have really strong memories based around recipes. I do think I'm going to have to talk to my mother after this, because I certainly never got a nosegay in my lunch.
I will just say one last thing, which is that my mom realized in reading my book when she was reading the manuscript that the extent to which what she had done for me, I had understood was love. And that was this critical, she had done it because she loved me, but she never knew if I was absorbing it and digesting it as such. And that those things are the way that we prepare food for our families, and the way that we, even if it's a simple bowl of shelled peas, which takes time to shell, and have to get them fresh and when they're good and make sure they're sweet. And it's like, and still it's not that difficult, but it communicates something very essential, and to take that little bit of extra time, your kid registers it, and that's why too, when my mom says that her proof of concept, she's like, you really got it, like it worked. So just a last word.
Yeah, it's very true. That's that's such a true statement. And I think it's true with people, with their friends too. I think this year has been a time where people have had, rough days here and there, and when people reach out to somebody. I think when you reach out to somebody and you have like the gift of food, it just, no matter what, it always makes it more special. We had a comment that, hold on, let me find that. That was a great comment that you said. Bridget said she never realized how much, she said, I never realized how much I loved food, not just to eat, but to read cookbooks and imagine what it would taste like. Still one of my favorite things, imagining the flavor more than eating it. So it's so true. Whether you're ever going to make of one of the recipes in one of these cookbooks or not, it's just so nice to be able to learn more about people through the foods that they eat and what they cook. So Fanny, thank you so much. That was really, really wonderful to listen to, and we thank you for being on our program today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
And good luck and happy holidays to you too.
Likewise.
Okay, so we are going to wrap up today's program with just a couple of more resources for all of you to get out there and share these wonderful cookbooks with your patrons, or to start cooking yourself. But again, just a moment to thank you all for this great, incredible year of Lunch and Learn. And Miriam, it's been fun hanging out with you on these Lunch and Learns.
It's been a treat.
So we just have a blog post, a pretty new blog post up on our Borrow, Read, Repeat page called Cookbooks to Savor. And there's some of our really fun popular fall cookbooks. So we encourage you to take a look over on our Borrow, Read, Repeat page for those. And also we can't end any program without talking about more books, of course. So Miriam put this great collection together of further reading for cooking and holiday prep. And of course, this will be sent out in the wrap up, but we've got this great Edelweiss collection for you. Miriam, are there any of these books that you want to point out?
I think Black Food by Bryant Terry is really exceptional. And also, I do want to let folks know, please visit the Edelweiss catalog here, because they are actual sample recipes that, and it will also give you a beautiful insider view of the material.
That's true. There's a lot of great spreads. I'm looking forward to the Zabar's cookbook and I think the best cookie book ever too. I think I'm gonna maybe make some extra special cookies this Christmas. So, but thank you all so much for joining us. Have a great day. We would love for you to fill out the survey at the end and let us know what you want to hear from us next year. But until then, thank you for being a Lunch and Learn attendee, and thank you for spending the year with us. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.